why don't we go ahead and get going? Anybody else wants to jump in, they can. And let us open with prayer. And I think it's a particularly great time to be in this conversation, being the couple days after Pentecost, because we're trying to move ourselves and our church outside the comfort zone, which is always the way I've understood Pentecost, is the Holy Spirit getting frustrated and pushing the disciples out of their comfort zone. So let us pray. Blessed and loving God, I do thank you for those who are willing to consider leaving their comfort zone, who are interested in helping others to learn about your love. Now, as always, what I ask is that you encourage us, you empower us, you push us into doing what's best, and that you give us just the right things to say when we do see those opportunities. Amen.
Amen.
Let's see, we are recording, and so I will share my screen. Get out of the way. All right. I've begun to really like this phrase, so I'm starting to use it in all my workshops, all my classes, that there are shadowy figures drifting past us. They may be walking down the block, driving by, or just casually aware that we exist, and we want them to become friends, and that's our goal. So today the agenda is, and I'll be very quick with this since you've all seen it, but just I think it's helpful to go over what our basic process is, and then we'll move on to the top 10 ideas, the ones that in my opinion are the best ones. Then I'm gonna, I can't remember what I ended up with. I think 9 others that I'm just gonna mention by title because I thought they were worth thinking about for just a second. Then the secondary activities, as we go through the ideas, one of the things I'll emphasize is we need to make sure our event is a minimum of 45 minutes long, and an hour is probably better, so that there's enough time to actually build relationships. If we have an ice cream social and somebody just walks in, grabs an ice cream cone and leaves, that we really haven't made a relationship. We haven't made a connection. So we need other things going on. And so I've got a list of what I'm calling secondary activities you might put in with those. Then I've got some other things that I wanted to call to your attention. And finally, I hope we'll have time for your ideas, discussions, questions, whatever. So anyway, you know this, our goals when reaching out to new people are not to focus on attendance and budget, but rather to help people grow closer to God. And if we do that, if we show God's love, it's very likely our attendance and budget will improve. And actually, TriTank is working on a paper they're calling What Works, which shows that the stuff we're talking about today and have in the past works. Churches have had noticeable increases in attendance and budget, but more importantly, they can point to people who grew in their knowledge of God's love. So our overall process, and again, you've all seen this, but I want to just really stress it because I'm really going to be pushing the envelope today, that you're not going to be able to do everything. Please don't get frustrated. Certainly don't overwhelm yourself and stop. And please remember, you're never alone. You're frustrated, you're upset, you can't figure something out, or you're just tearing your hair out. I'm at the other end of the phone line or email list. Just give me a call and we'll work out something. And particularly for this one, I'm going to have some events that you're probably already doing that can be modified to do better as an outreach activity. But if you jump on 2 new things, that's probably one too many. You may put one aside and say, okay, we're going to get this going, and then we're going to do something else in the fall. But, if you see 4 or 5 things you think are really great, find a reason to cut it down to 1. And we've talked about this. Why don't people love us anymore? Why won't they talk to us? Why aren't our churches full? And that in the 50s and particularly the early 60s, everyone was expected to go to church, but that's not where we are anymore. And even if many churches act as if we are there, So maybe that expectation was good that everybody should show up to church. I mean, we can debate that, but the truth is it's no longer true. Churches do not have that kind of positive reputation. Rather, when people talk church nowadays, this is the kind of things they think about. The banning of women as leaders, the sex scandals, the people saying we would be lucky if everyone in a gay bar was shot, and that the women's primary function is housework, things like that. And nowadays, both sides of the aisle, church is dominated by politics. There's just too many examples of that to pick a specific one. Now, this is interesting, and I want you to notice the ones I have bracketed here, that this is the survey that the Episcopal Church ran, and you can get it at episcopalchurch.org. But if you look on the right-hand column, the not religious say that 55% of Christians are hypocritical, then judgmental, then self-righteous, arrogant, unforgiving, all those negatives. And that's okay, that's kind of expected. But the scary part, I think, is on the left-hand column, when you look at the fact that only 57% of Christians say Christians are giving, which means 43% of Christians think Christians are not giving. 44% believe they're not compassionate. We are not compassionate or loving or respectful. If our own people have such a low impression of us, is it at all surprising that we have a hard time making connections with newer people? I mean, we've got a real image problem, and the challenge in that is to appreciate, accept, and acknowledge that in many communities that call themselves churches, I refuse to do so, a lot of these images are absolutely correct. They are disrespectful, they are unloving, and all those things. So we have to work on that. And, I wouldn't want to be part of that group of people we just described. Now, the good news is that's not a true picture of your church. And I know, I've followed your churches online and stuff like that, so I know pretty much some of what you're about anyway. I can't claim to know you. But the bad news is your audience thinks it is a true picture of you. So obviously our challenge is to change their image of us. And I love the word intrigued here. We must intrigue them enough to listen. One researcher claims, and I think he's just making an extreme statement, but over a day, we see 10,000 things we could focus on. And if you're driving down the street, don't do it while you're driving, do it while you're a passenger. Notice all the things you could be paying attention to, each of the houses you could be looking at, each of the signs, there no question, there are thousands of things we could pay attention to in a given day. How to lift up what we're trying to say and break through all that other stuff so that people will actually listen to us. So is there any real chance of getting people to listen to us, to reach new people? And the answer is yes, but it takes some effort. And it's not a lot, it's not hard, it's not expensive, it's not time consuming, but it is effort. In fact, I have recently had shoulder replacement surgery, and I find the parallel with physical rehab is so very strong. It's not even about the specific exercises you do, it's about doing some exercises, doing them consistently, and doing them over a long period of time. I admit I didn't really accept when the doctor told me that recovery from this particular surgery was a 12-month process. And I know a lot of people don't accept when I say reaching out to new people and ending up making them our friends can take 12 months, but it really can. In fact, it can take longer than that. But the point is to just understand it is not likely to be a one and done quick process. And I've said this before, I'll just jump down to the bottom of the summary that despite all these negatives, 1 in 3 people near you are willing to talk. They're not anxious. They're very cautious. They already have an overloaded calendar. They're not ready to attend on Sunday. But if approached with love, they are willing to talk. And once we can talk to them, then we can start working with them on deepening that conversation. This is the pattern that I like to look at. Basically, the first 4 steps are what I call the intrigue phase. They have to be intrigued enough to look at us. In looking at us, they have to learn enough to know us a little. As they know us, discover they may like us, and then discover they probably can trust us. That's kind of phase, what I call stage 1. Stage 2, which is where we're putting most of our attention today, is then they may interact with us. And then stage 3 is building a relationship. Now, this could happen quickly. And by previously churched, what I mean is people who have had some extensive church background. Maybe they went to church growing up and left church when they went to college and haven't been back. Or maybe they were in church until their kids left the home, and then they just kind of drifted away. But the point is, they at some point in their life, church was a major part of their life, was a major part of their expectation of the week. And as I say, today we're going to focus specifically on the interact with us, and specifically through events we can put on during the summer. A couple key things, and maybe the single most important one is to get our head around that what we're doing is 2 things. It's whatever the specific thing is, like a worship service or a book sale or whatever, but it's also an opportunity to make a connection with the new person. So what we need to get is in the habit of asking ourselves, how can this activity be an opportunity to make a new friend? And I have a whole piece on language. If you want to see it, just let me know. But one of the most important ones is to think of everybody who comes into our attention, into our connection, is a guest. They're not a visitor, they're not a purchaser, they're not a vendor, they're a guest. And that we don't greet, we host. And that's an especially important change in thought process on Sunday mornings. And we always try to be assertive, but never aggressive. We ask, but we never insist. And the danger of using jargon, because when we use jargon, what we've done is we've said to the people, we don't care if you understand. We've excluded them. We've said, go away. We're not interested in communicating with you. And unfortunately, the Episcopal Church is full of jargon. So very quickly, stage 1, the intrigue stage, that's all about promotion. People won't come to what we're offering because we wish and hope, or even if we only pray. I love the Lutheran phrase that they use a lot, that it's God's work, but it's our hands. Social media is the best single option, and it's most effective when people will comment and share on their pages whatever you show. And this is becoming, actually, Facebook has made a recent change, like within the last couple months, in how they do things, which means if your people are willing to comment and share on their pages, the impact of that is now magnified. We can turn an ad, post into an ad, and I have a training video on that. It's very easy to do. Excuse me. Just ballpark if you pay for a boost, an ad, it costs about a penny for every account that sees the ad. That doesn't mean they paid attention to it. It just means it was in front of them. And one of the best things is you can target. You can target geographically, but you can also target groups such as parents. So if you're trying to reach out to young adults, parents, this is a great way to do it. Personal invitations are also very important. If you have something that's focused on children, families, any kids you can con into helping you, be they your children or your grandchildren or next door neighbor, they're the best promoters. Give them tools to use, such as put together an invite card like they might use to invite somebody to a birthday party. But please, if you have a day school, don't forget to invite them. It's astonishing how many churches will mutter that they wish they had more families in on Sunday, but they've never invited their day school people to anything. Also give adults tools to use. Yard signs and banners, they can be good, that they're more expensive. And the problem is it has to be able to be read at 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. And if you think about that, that means you don't get a whole lot of words at all, very, very few. But if you put them in places like near daycare centers, parks, for, again, a children-focused activity, a family-focused activity, that they can be effective. They can be effective. And if you're careful not to put a, say next Saturday rather than a specific date, you can use them again next year. Sponsors, and I'm going to talk about this a lot as I go on, but think about what businesses might want to sponsor your event. Not only will you get something from it physically, but you may also get, they'll promote it. If they're a sponsor, they'll promote it in their communication networks. Don't forget newspaper and TV. Now, it has to be something a little unusual or specifically community focused. I'm going to mention a couple of these as we go through. And I do have a how-to on news releases. It's very easy. Just ask me and I'll send it to you and be happy to help you put it together. Next door, the most important thing is members posting. Phrase it as a personal announcement and not an ad. And this last one is new. I have never personally used it. A couple churches have. Basically, what you can do with the USPS, the Postal Service, is you designate an area you want to send a flyer to. It's called Every Door Direct Mail. You produce the mailing, and then they deliver it within the area you choose. So you get to make it look really nice. It isn't just bland. From what I can tell, and like I said, I've never actually run this, so this is the best I can figure out from attempting some experiments. It'll cost you about 20 cents a house. So that's a lot more expensive than say Facebook, but it gets you more direct coverage. And as we go through, you'll see a couple things I'm suggesting are focused directly on specific areas, and this might be worth considering for that kind of thing. I've said it before, assertive, never aggressive. And say your offer first. We would love to give you information. We want to give you something. Then the request. Please complete the form or text the number so you can do so. So we can do so. I know it sounds semantics, but if you think about it, if you start by asking somebody to do something, their mind tends to shut down before you get to the offer. Start with the offer. And I'll talk about this a lot in several formats in a minute. All right, the most important thing we do is follow up, because without regular follow-up, very few people return. And the keys are regular, consistent, friendly, personal, gentle, engaging, and probably short is one of the most important. And we're not going into come to church next week every single time. And occasionally, if there's something special happening, like for Pentecost. When I was helping people text, we texted about Pentecost. But the average Sunday, no. The reason I say texting works better is because texting is seen at least 90% of the time, whereas emails are not even opened 80% of the time. In other words, they may be open 20% of the time. So the difference is between 20% of the people at least glancing at what you've sent them versus 90%. And you can't do that if you don't have their contact information. And our goal, and this I think is helpful, our goal is that they be connected to a church a year later. If we kind of have our head around that's what we're looking to accomplish. And typically less than 10% of first-time Sunday guests will still be connected to the church 1 year later. And most of them will be what I call the previously church. And I'm glad they came. I'm not disrespecting them in any way, but it's not unchurched people, really unchurched people. And that's true because we made no attempt to build a relationship. In modern language, we ghosted them. Now, there's no research on the number who watched online, brought a cookbook, anything like that. but did not give their contact information. I would have to guess under 1% are connected to the church a year later. It's just very unlikely. So it's essential we get their contact information. A name and the cell phone number is best. And if you don't have the information about how to accomplish that, please let me know, and I'd be happy to send it on. And I have an offer, and that's because I'm so committed to your success. I'll help you with the texting by doing most of the work. You approve all the messages, and I pay the charges at least for the next 6 months. I want people to discover you. There's no cost to you. This is an image I found that I really like. This is what happens most of the time to our guests. They become ghosts that drift away and never actually become friends. Okay, moving on to summer things, looking at an event, which I call stage 2. These thoughts apply to all of them. We have basically 4 goals. Goal number 1 is have people attend. Goal number 2 is have people enjoy themselves, which by that I mean feel it was worth their time. And that's what's absolutely important. Time is the critical issue right now. And people have to feel like they spent their time well before they'll think about coming back and spending more time with you. Third is have people learn more about your church, and I'll say more about that in a moment. Fourth, obtain their contact information and then follow up. So enjoy themselves. Obviously, this depends on the event. For all events, be hospitable. And, it's simple things like, where are the restrooms? Are there enough chairs? If you're outside, there are going to be animals. Somebody's going to bring their dog. Is there water for the animals? Water for humans? Smiling faces? What is there for kids to do? Think about what would make you feel welcome at an event. And that's what somebody else wants too. And as I've said, it needs to be about 45 minutes long or longer. Learn about your church. Well, next to getting their contact information, this is the most important thing you do. And the way I like to phrase it is, what do you want them to know that they did not know before? As they drive out of the parking lot, what do they now know about your church they didn't know when they drove in? What part of your story have they learned? And a good way to think about what you want to share is connected to those negative stereotypes. And these are just a few examples. You want them to know you are concerned about others and you're generous. Therefore, show your work with a food pantry. You want them to know you're open to questions and doubts. And this is a hard one to do, but it shows studies with lots of questions. You might have and I'll show you some of the, when I say posters, what I mean by that in a minute. But you may have those and just have, these are the questions that got asked during this session type of thing. You want them to know you are not judgmental. If it's okay in your congregation, some it is, some it isn't, show the rainbow flag. You care about the environment, have recycling. And this is one of those that you're more likely to produce a negative impression than a positive one, in the sense that everybody expects you to have recycling. But if you don't have it, that says something about you to people who really care. For children, show safety protocols. Youth, shows photos of kids in action. I kept on saying show posters, photos, because the best way is graphics. You can be gentle, not pushy, but here's the key thing. Everything must be understood in half a second from 6 feet away. People are unlikely to walk up to a poster and read a page worth of information or look at a 4x6 photo. They're going to be walking down past it, glance over. They have to grab that attention. Now, you may be able to draw them in to look at something more, but the initial impression is half a second from 6 feet away, and there's lots of research on that. And you think to yourself, when you look at these, you'll say, oh, how can I get those photos blown up big enough? Most companies that do any kind of design work can print the photos. You probably have somebody in the congregation who works for a company that has a large printer. A very good chance. The ones I'm going to show you were printed by a company that does electrical design, but they do large scale drawings, so they have a large scale printer. The frames I'll show you were made from 34-inch PVC very easily and inexpensively. Feet are 4x4s with holes drilled into them. Very simple. My 10 and 12-year-old grandchildren helped me do it. But here's the key. They know you worship every Sunday. They know that. Tell them what they don't know. Now, if you're doing something unusual, I'm going to show you one in a minute in your worship, then yeah, sure, talk about it. But if your worship is pretty standard, probably don't even mention it. So here are some of the things you might want to do. The banner we did up is useful in a lot of different places, and the one on the right is where it was being used at a flower sale. Again, just quick impressionistic statements. And you can put this up. I don't know if I have it up all the time, but you could have it for things anytime there are people coming into your space that don't know you well. For example, what about during a blood drive? Have this where people, and again, not in their face, but just as they're walking in or out, or maybe as they're lying on the table, this is in front of them. Or maybe during voting, if your place is a voting, if you have it just sitting in the narthex, so people walk by seeing it, they're probably going to be standing online for a while. Give them something to read. Give them something to look at. Here are some of the posters I talked about we did up. Now, I should have used a heavier font. I'll say that right up front. If you look on the left, this is showing our food pantry. I had the woman turn around so I get the back of her t-shirt. It says, "Everyone deserves to eat." Second Harvest t-shirt. And notice I didn't try to explain 3,300 plus fed. I didn't try to explain that was a month, a week, a year, what have you. The point was to get across an impression. The one on the side, our youth serve. That's the youth working with the food pantry, if you could see it a little closer. Our church has a real mix of music, not a praise band type of thing, but we do use, and I have nothing to do with this, so I'll give them all the credit. Trumpet, a flute, guitars, percussion, piano, organ, get all mixed, beautifully mixed in. I love it. But so we are, that time I do mention the worship just because there's something unusual to say about it. Second thing I mentioned was learn about your church. What can they know that you did not know before? Now, in addition to the posters, it might be, depending on what your event is, you could have a couple, again, I would not overdo it, 1 or 2 tables with a person to answer questions about specific projects, about particular issues or questions. You might have one about, if you're proud of your youth group, you might have something about that, or you may have something about your work in the community, anything along those lines. This is slightly more important than that, is to get their contact information. And I have lots of information on this. If you don't have it, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to get it to you. Make sure you announce it, that the cards are available from time to time, and just come up with a reason to get the mic and get the loudspeaker. For example, if you're doing a yard sale, you could have somebody get on it and say, like you get in a lot of stores, thank you all for being here. Please don't forget we have the children's clothes are down on the right over there. And while you're here, we would love to keep you informed about other things happening, etc. And if you have any of those display stations, include the cards there. Prayer stations are never under any circumstances inappropriate. Yard sale, have a prayer station, whatever. And offer them the opportunity to write their prayer down on a contact card. And then you could, and I'll talk about a church that did this in a minute. The next Sunday, you include their prayers in your prayers of the people. Monday, you write them and say, thank you for honoring us by asking us to pray with you. It was included on the Sunday service. Or you could pray with them immediately and then offer them the opportunity to fill out a card. Drawings can be fun. And again, even at a yard sale, No reason not to have a drawing for stuff. Be imaginative. Ask local merchants. They can donate items or they could donate services. It doesn't matter. The idea is to have some fun. And then the drawing entry is a contact card. And you will see if you don't have not, again, please ask me to send it to you. But the cards I use actually have something at the bottom, which gives them the option to opt out of receiving further communication. Good question. And I'll bring this up a couple times as we're going through the specifics. What interests, hobbies, professions are held by people in your congregation? Those can be a starting point for an activity. If somebody in your church has a 1957 classic Thunderbird, they're in a classic car group. And one thing classic car clubs love to do is show off their cars. There you go. Question I get a lot, church grounds versus a park. What works best for you? That's the question. I have a preference for church grounds, but I'll tell you flat out that some of the most effective events have been in a park. If it's in a park, you probably need to make some extra efforts to tell your story. You know, if it's at the church grounds, you're automatically saying a little something about yourself. If you do it at the church, do everything possible to make it visible from the street. People will notice that things are going on. They're probably not going to turn in, but they'll remember that your church is active. And particularly if it's unusual things like a classic car show. They'll say, hey, this place does some fun things. All right, specific ideas. And the first one is one that many people are doing, but I'm offering some suggestions about changing it. And that's the blessing of the backpacks before the start of school. If you want guests, don't do it Sunday morning. Sorry, I know that's a lot easier. But frankly, very, very, very few new people are going to show up in the middle of a worship service for a 2-minute blessing of their backpack. I said very few. I didn't say none, but good time would be late Sunday afternoon or a weekday early evening, something along that line. Now you're going to develop, if you don't do it on Sunday morning, of course, you have to develop a little bit of a liturgy. Again, not long. I would parallel it to the blessing of the pet blessings in October. If you do it and it's outside, which, as I say, as many times as possible, I recommend that. Keyboard and 2 strong voices are enough for a couple simple songs. One of the reasons for doing it outside is for somebody who's very cautious about being involved in the church. It's a little less formal. Dragging them into the sanctuary has a little more, we're dragging you into the sanctuary feeling. As I said, 45 minutes, invite the friends of kids. And for example, if you're doing ice cream along with the blessing of the backpacks and other things, tell your kids that if they invite a friend, they and their friend go to the front of the line for the ice cream. I mean, everybody's going to get some, so it really isn't anything other than, but it feels special. And go way beyond just school backpacks. Invite the school, make it a blessing of the schools. Invite the school personnel from the principal down to the custodian, particularly if you're in an area, a lot of places aren't anymore, but where the elementary school has a pretty reasonable district around your church that a lot of your people are part of, but it doesn't have to be just that. Invite the particularly the teachers, find a way to invite them, and then have a blessing for school staffs. Don't ignore the homeschoolers. They're a great community to build a connection with. The homeschoolers tend to be a very tight-knit group, and if you get connected with that group, there's a good chance you'll build some relations with some families. Second idea, meet your neighbor. And, most places they don't, people don't know each other well. But I'm thinking particularly if you have an area with a lot of new construction or that kind of thing. And this is one of those where that USPS direct mail might be an appropriate thing to do. I would suggest if you're going to do this, plan it so you're doing it, say, 3 times, maybe one day in July, August, September. So you build a bit of a community, you build a bit of a pattern. You need to do something, a hot dog dinner, ice cream social, some other activity to kind of center it. Local merchants want people to know about them. I'm not talking about Starbucks, but I'm talking about the grind the bean coffee shop. They want people to know about it. Ask them to come on in, help promote it. Maybe they sponsor something. Maybe they have giveaways. Might be good to have some meet each other activities. For a few minutes, group by street, maybe another time group with parents and non-parents, whatever. Depending on how tight your area is, you might even do name tags by color, so that this subdivision's in blue and this subdivision's in red and everybody else is in purple or something like that. You know where I'm going. You don't have to do anything overly religious. Again, this is one of those cases where having it at the church is kind of important, because it says, yes, we're not being pushy about it, but that's who we are. Now, for myself, if we were doing it, I would wear my collar to identify me, but would probably also wear informal shorts, because that's who I am. But authenticity is what matters. Be who you are. Again, a prayer booth works anywhere. Most of the time I'd have it off to the side so it's obvious but not pushy. Name tags are good, in fact, probably essential for something like this, but anytime you do name tags, the 6-foot rule still works. The name has to be large enough that people can see it from a reasonable distance. And again, this is one of those places where you could put up the posters, but also have a booth or two about church activities. If you do, you want them visible, but you don't want it to come across like this is really just a sales pitch. The church information should be secondary to meeting new friends in the neighborhood. This might be a time to invite your police, your fire. The police almost certainly will show up. They're really big right now on trying to build relations with communities, and I would give them a few moments to speak if they wanted to. Again, if one school district, you might invite the principal of one or two, and just point them out, and you don't give them time to talk, but just say, hey, that's Mr. Smith. He's the principal of the elementary school. If you have any questions, you know who he is. Always have opportunities to leave their contact information. And anyone who does, immediately thank them for coming the next day. All right, community events. This could be any kind of thing, but anything that's happening in the community you're not doing your part of. St. Joseph's in McDonough, Georgia, got 78 new contacts during a festival for flowers. 6 of those had bad numbers, probably landlines. Most of the ones they got were from a prayer booth. Remainder were from drawing for a basket of professional quality items given by a dentist. So ask for donations. And again, this is a great time for a local business to become better known. And it doesn't have to be material goods. It could be services. The dentist could have offered a drawing for a free cleaning, whatever. We sent a thank you text to everyone who gave us their contact information. If you're involved in a festival, community event, find a fun reason for people to stop. Drawings are always fun, but the more of your people who are hanging around saying hello to their friends as they walk by, the more friends will stop. Prayer group, prayer station. Again, you want to be able to tell your story to some extent. A couple posters might work, but this is another thing that drives me absolutely crazy, and it's done at professional conferences and stuff. Imagine what can be seen if somebody is standing in front of the booth. How often they hang their sign from the table and one person completely blocks the entire sign. Think about that. But the whole effort, again, is don't go there just because, but go there trying to think, how can us being at this festival allow us to meet new people? And here's a good one. If you did not Googled and Facebook searched and Instagram searched newcomers, new movers, anything along that line in your area, you've really missed the boat. Clayton, North Carolina, the newcomers has a annual picnic. You know, if the church isn't represented there, even if it's just people walking around with a T-shirt that says the name of the church, boy, you've missed the boat. You know, if you're not willing to do that, I'm not sure. Anyway, this is one of my all-time favorites. This is a good one. Not that the others aren't. The jam session for musicians, and I know this from my wife. Amateur musicians love to have a reason to get together and play. And most churches have great acoustics. Now, this is one of the few that I would say probably would work best inside. And this can be ongoing. In fact, I'd suggest you do it. Do it once a month through the fall. In fact, I would probably say we're going to do it once a month through the end of the calendar year. Give yourself enough reason to build, enough time to build a community, build a process. You may get a choir member out of it, who you know. And it's very easy. This is one of those that you could probably do while you're doing something else new too, because all you basically need is a person to coordinate, to be in front and say, okay, this is the music, we're going to play this that right now, that kind of thing. And somebody to promote. All right. The coffee and cookies afterwards is nice. Promotion, music stores, Facebook booths where you specifically target those with music interests. You might get a music store to sponsor one or more, and they will announce it to their community. If Jeff's Guitar Store is sponsoring your August event, they're going to let their people know about it. Another one of private music teachers. They might provide the snacks and promote it. Ask them to at very least to announce it. And don't be at all surprised if some of these people show up. The music teacher and the music store owner and those people, they want to have fun too. Don't forget to reach out to school music teachers, even during the summer. If you want teenagers in your building, invite them. Teachers may be interested in playing for fun. And if you do what I said, continue it into the fall, re-invite the music classes. You ought to be able to contact information at any time. But, you know, in this one, particularly if you're going to do it for 6 months, maybe not push it too much until the second month when you've built some trust. But don't wait too long. Don't not do it. July 4th, the obvious one, and it's kind of late, but you probably still have time to get something simple together. The typical one is hot dogs and ice cream with games for kids. Works great. You decide about, say, fireworks. Now, there's a church down in, I think it's Lumberton, North Carolina, who are right across the street from the place where the fireworks are done for the community, football stadium. You can't see the ground ones, but you can see all the overhead ones very well. And they make a big deal about come sit in our parking lot and watch the fireworks. Wow, what an advantage that is. Again, if you want young people, invite the Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts to lead part of the service. Your decision about whether or not you do the Pledge of Allegiance on church grounds. Some clergy are fine with it, some aren't. It's kind of funny, the patriotic music is well known, but only the first verse. So if you're going to do some singing of patriotic music, you might want to hand out words for it. But again, a simple keyboard, a couple strong voices is more than enough to lead some singing. One thing you might do that would provide you something that's a little different from anyone else is include a retirement of flag ceremony. That's when people bring in flags that have gotten old, worn, no longer really appropriate to display. The Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the American Legion, the VFW, and probably others will take the old flags and later burn them. You might want to burn them while you're there. This is a good activity to promote since you're probably the only one doing it that day. You might even get some media attention. Skipped over one. Okay, Vacation Bible School. Another one, lots of places do, but and they'll put out an ad saying we're having V.B.S. this week, but they don't really think about it. That's not a major focus. First of all, remember V.B.S. is jargon. particularly for those who didn't grow up in the church, they probably kind of have an idea. Besides which, since when is school in the summer an intriguing thing? So work on the title. Now, few people can send their kids during daytime during the week. You know your congregation, you know your community. If it's the kind of place where there's a lot of stay-at-home mothers that can do this, daytime might work great. But for most places, it no longer does. A 90-minute evening program I found works well, starting with a light dinner. If you did something like once a week for 3 or 4 weeks, you could even get away with hot dogs every time. I personally am not fond of Saturday or Sunday daytime since weekends are so busy already. But the bottom line is, as far as the schedule goes, that's likely to be determined by a volunteer's availability. There's lots of curriculum available. If anybody doesn't have one and would like some ideas, I'll be happy to post it in our group. There's a good chance somebody else has last year's, they'd be happy to send you. This is a great time to mention fall programs gently. For us, the largest class was always the adult class that we ran on a related subject. The issue here is, again, promotion. This is a place where if you have a catchy title and you have a good schedule and something for adults, Facebook can work really well for a way to promote it. And it's just the effort of actually making promotion not just an afterthought, but right up there near the top. I mentioned ice cream socials as part of other activities, but you can do just that. A lot of churches just do free ice cream once a month for the summer. Again, you have to have enough other stuff happening go on, so there's time to mingle. Again, it's a great time to invite local merchants to donate items. Probably, again, once a month through the summer, make it a habit. Everybody knows, hey, the third Sunday or the third Thursday of the month, the church down the street's doing free ice cream. You know, I'm hesitant about this. One of the churches has turned this into a parents' night out, or has created a parents' night out that includes ice cream and everything. If I were doing that, I would definitely require pre-registration. You know, you don't want to get overwhelmed and not have enough volunteers to take care of enough unruly children. Unruly children is that's just normal, but you want to make sure you have enough to take care of it. So that's your call. It could be really, really popular if you can pull it off. This is one St. Paul's in South St. Louis does as a summer barbecue. Exactly the kind of thing we were talking about. All right, I want to take just a moment because I know I've thrown so much at you on this. And I want to remind you that the goal here is not to teach religion or talk spirituality. The goal is to do something that allows us to begin building a relationship that eventually will allow us to talk spirituality. And, you know, one of the arguments you get a lot of times, particularly from the vestry member or something, is, well, what does that have to do with religion? Well, the answer is really nothing. It's an attempt to get to the point. It's getting them in the door to the point where you can talk religion. True evangelism is what happens later. All right, bike rodeo. Again, simple to do. You probably have members who did this as a youth. Sometimes the police will set it up as a safety event, and they're likely to attend even if they're not taking the lead. If you go to YouTube and type in bike rodeo, there's plenty of videos about how to set one up. This is the time you promote at bike shops, ask for donations for prizes from the bike shops and other merchants. And again, the bike shop doesn't have to do something heavy, something major. They could have a certificate for one free change of a flat tire. I would target parents. I would also have adult and child groups if you're having contests. Involve the police. Have them compete. This is a good opportunity to reach out to the media. This is probably something that, again, is unusual enough particularly if you can get the police involvement, that the police are going to compete with the 8-year-olds to see who can handle their bike best. I don't know, something like that. I think you could very likely get some media, and I would not be shocked, particularly in mid-sized markets, to get TV. This is a very very visual event. Weeknight worship. All right. Again, something you may already be doing, but I'm going to suggest you make some alterations to it. Some researchers say up 50% of people feel unavailable for worship on Sunday morning. It's work, travel, sports, whatever's going on. Doesn't matter if we think they are available. If they think they're not available, that's where the decision gets made. I, again, would plan this as a 6-month experiment to see if you can build a congregation. This is more likely to draw the previously churched than the never churched, which is okay. Now, the important thing is I'm talking about a full service here, not a half-hearted effort, which means, and I'm sorry to phrase it that way, but I've been to enough Wednesday night services where nobody's particularly excited to be there. All right? I mean, just, say the truth. But that means you need cooperation from altar guild, musicians, other volunteers. A keyboardist and 2 strong voices works in most churches, particularly the smaller churches. And you can use last week's lesson, sermon, music, and all that if then. Or have a music theme and invite youth or other groups. We did a bluegrass service a couple times. Same service, just the music was bluegrass-oriented music. You might have again, particularly in the fall, you might have a teenage group, some group that you find out about through one of the local music teachers, and they're going to provide. If, I don't know, the high school string quartet is going to provide the music for your service next week, chances are their parents will come, chances are their friends will come. Promote throughout the community. If one of the big things is Sunday sports during the summer, yard signs at the sports stud that say, cannot worship on Sunday, join us on Thursdays at 6 p.m. No guilt, not just an offer. Might, depending on how it's going, invite a food truck so people can pick up dinner, announce that it'll be there. Always announce if kids are welcome. All right, 10, and I'm really looping several together here at once, but I mentioned that you might have an adult program as part of the V.B.S, but you could also do a separate event, discussion groups. And you'll notice that most of these things I'm throwing out are oriented around the negative impressions people have of the church, trying to offset some of those. Does the church care about environment? This is a new program, Love God, Love God's World, that the National Church is promoting. There's a link there to it. Looks good. From what I've read, it's a 4-week series, and the topics look interesting. Racial reconciliation. Most dioceses are doing some kind of racial reconciliation training, and I have never yet seen one that announces it outside the church, outside the Episcopal churches. Is there a reason why we can't invite the community? Major questions, maybe one a week. And now the thing about this is do the ones you're comfortable addressing, discussing. You don't have to say, I really don't want to talk about that. Then don't schedule that topic. But there's plenty of them. Science and religion, literalism, divorce, remarriage, the Bible, the source of the Bible and the translations, what's the differences? Must I forgive the person who abused me? I think that can be a really heavy one, a really good heavy one. Is it okay to have questions and doubts? Of course, trans people and Christianity, LGBTQ, abortion. The next one's interesting. A young couple I know in their early 30s, I was talking to over the weekend and asked them what would interest them to hear about. And they had recently been to a marriage ceremony where I wish I could have heard the ceremony because apparently the officiant went off on some weird direction and they got the impression the bride was actually marrying Jesus. So, Jesus Christ in the marriage is worth talking about. Exclusivity. Why pain in the world if God is loving? Heaven and hell. Christianity's relationship to other religions. If you want to do something like this, but you don't want to you want to have some structure around it, there's a great book. I really love it. What's the Least I Can Believe and Still Be a Christian? He's a Presbyterian pastor. It's been around a few years. There's, I believe, 20 chapters. I should have looked it up again. 10 what you don't have to believe and 10 what you should believe. So you could, again, very easily say, if you're having a 4-week series, you pick which chapters you're going to cover and go with it. I wanted to remind you again that there's too much to do everything here. If I were looking at this, my process would be to go through and strike out probably all but 2 or 3 or 4 at the most and say, nope, we're not doing those. And then go back and look at what are the easiest ones to do, because you want to do it well and it's going to be a little more difficult than you think. So pick what you think are the easiest ones. And as I told you before, if you jump on 2 new ones, if one of them is a modification of something you're already doing, you're just making a tweak, that's fine. Or it's very easy to pull off, like the music jam sessions. But probably one is about it. Real quick, here's some others that didn't make my list as the top 10. Classic car show, motorcycle ride-in, hobby fair. By that I mean, what hobbies do people in your congregation have that they might be willing to show off, like beekeeping or unusual things. Caregiver respite time. Trinity in Fuquay Varina, North Carolina has started this. I think that's a wonderful ministry. Food truck rodeo, First Harvest blessing and collection for food pantry in the late August, early September. Have people bring in some of the things from their gardens and bless them and then give them to the food pantry. First Responders Day is always appropriate. Yard sale, I just mentioned that to remind us that can be a way to meet new people. And one that the more I think about, the more I get excited about is the small business rodeo. I've mentioned this briefly. If you're in an area where within, say, a mile of your church or, mile and a half, there's lots of small businesses, local businesses, and, they want to meet people in the neighborhood. So giving them the opportunity to do that. This was a classic car cruise in by a church near me. I don't think you'll get Kyle Petty to come, but, you can still do it. All right, then the secondary activity ideas. Like I say, if you're having, say, a blessing of the backpacks and school staff and supplies, by the way, there's no reason if you're doing that, I think having donations of school supplies to go to that elementary school would be a good kind of tie-in. But anyway, other things you can do at the same time, bounce house, church tour and discussion about the Episcopal Church. This is probably something tertiary. In other words, not a lot of people are going to hang around and do a church tour, but you might want to have that available. A petting zoo, pony rides, battery-powered car races, slip and slide, dunk the priest booth. Again, depends on who you are, whether you're going to sit in that and get dunked or not. There are people that do tricks with their drones. That would be a lot of fun. Cornhole competition is always a thing. Water balloon fights, video game contests, shaved ice, all that stuff can be done parallel to or in addition to something like the blessing of backpacks or some other thing that isn't going to take a long period of time. Most important, of course, pray. We want to pray, and we're not praying that other people show up at our church. We're praying that we be the kind of person, the kind of community that invites, intrigues, encourages people to come be involved in our community. I find it's helpful to sit down and spend a moment thinking about my goal for the event and then shape the prayer around that rather than just something fairly broad, be as specific as possible. But that's me. If you haven't seen this, and that, by the way, down at the end, down at the bottom, is an email address. Why they decided to do it this way, I don't know. But anyway, this is in Baltimore. What they're doing is they're building this around, this is from our national church, they're building it around the sense of a festival or a revival, and they're calling it 3 tents around the revival kind of imagery. And there'll be a group of discuss. There'll be a lot of stuff that's done for everybody, but there'll be a group of specific workshops around caring for creation, around racial reconciliation, and then around evangelism. And it looks excellent. It looks very, very good. There is some group pricing if you have a group that wants to go. A couple dioceses I know are putting together groups to try to save. I don't know if North Carolina is. If I hear anything, I'll let those in North Carolina know. And I mentioned this earlier, but I want to say it again, that I'm committed to your success. I'd be more than happy to help you with the texting, doing most of the work for you at no cost to you. And I'm also willing at any time to meet with you, your church, your team, your leaders, whomever. Just answer any questions, make a presentation. You tell me what would be helpful, and I'm willing to do it. And finally, I want to mention that this fall we'll come up again with the blessing of the animals. And I will be doing a series of trainings on that. Just keep your eye open for that. Probably start in August. I got to get through that thing in Baltimore first before I can put my brain on anything else. But I'm of the belief that blessing of the animals is one of the best opportunities as far as something on our church calendar. Blessing of the animals and Shrove Tuesday, pancake dinner, are two of the best ways to meet people in the community of all the ones of all the opportunities we have. All right, let me stop the share. Well, that wasn't too bad. And see if you would unmute yourselves. I cannot unmute you. And let me know any questions you have or any ideas any things you've done that I haven't mentioned.
Ken, mention the JOT form for anybody who hasn't signed in.
That's right. Thank you. If you have not signed in, the JOT form to sign in is in the chat room. The link to that, I think everybody here has already signed in. But if other people want to be on the mailing list, just ask them to sign up. Shirley, would you be willing to come get me new coffee?
Yes. For a fee.
All right, put it on Beth's account. Shirley, you're not muted. Anybody have anything to add or questions? Anything jump out at you?
Ask the kids now what they would like to do.
Oh. Shirley had an interesting thought. For those of you who have children, ask them what would be a fun thing for the church to do. They can invite their friends to. Sure, why not?
Sure, why not?
Then they're more
Then
likely
they're more
to
likely
invite
to
their
invite
friends.
their friends.
Well, I don't want
Well, I
to
don't want to
keep them,
keep
but
them, but if
also don't want to
also
shut
don't
us
want to shut us
down.
off.
So if
So
anybody
if
has
anybody
anything,
has
please
anything,
jump in,
jump in.
or we can
I
have
just
a,
want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
It was a
sorry.
lot of
For a lot of great information.
Well, you've got a
Well,
good
you've got a good
conversation
conversation down there, Booth.
Beth.
Beth.
Yep.
Yep.
One thing
One
that is
thing
really
that is really
popular
popular
in
in
Stanford
Stanford
is bingo night.
bingo night.
Sorry, I didn't hear
Sorry, I
that.
didn't hear that.
Sorry, one
Sorry,
thing that's
one
really
thing that's
popular
really
in
popular in
Stanford is
Stanford
bingo
is bingo
night.
nights.
I'm getting feedback.
I'm getting
Hold
feedback.
on,
Hold on, just one.
Sure.
Let me participate. Okay, try that again. One more time.
All right. One thing that's really popular around Stanford is bingo nights. I've seen different churches do those. They'll get out a great bingo set and snacks and door prizes, and that one's pretty popular around here.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that is to find a way to advertise it, to promote it on Facebook, because Facebook considers bingo to be gambling, and it will not allow you to use the word. It took us a while. I can't remember which church it was. I don't think it was Sandy's. Anyway, we were trying to get an ad out, and they kept on bouncing it. It took us a while to figure out that's what they were what they were refusing to allow was the word bingo.
Welcome to Facebook, where they bounce whatever they want to bounce.
Yeah. One of the things, if you are boosting, one change, and I'm going to put out a new video on this, when you get to the special, what's it called? Anyway, it's where it's at. Are you in real estate or anything like that? It's special account categories, I think. Go ahead. I had always said avoid it, don't touch it, but it turns out Facebook's gotten really sensitive. And so I would put down the interest one, special interests. I would click that. What'll happen is some of your targeting options will be limited, but not by a whole lot. I don't think it'll give you any real trouble. But they bounce somebody for a statement about feeding the hungry as being anyway. They're getting so much grief about political stuff that they've gotten overly sensitive. But if you do touch that, it gives you're allowed to do more, but there's some limitation about who it goes to. But from what I've been able to research, I don't think those limitations will bother anybody. So I would suggest checking that special interests box. All righty. Well, feel free at any time. You hope you all know that to. Oh, wait a minute. Let me look at these chats. Oh. Okay. We got everybody. All righty. Well, everybody have a good day. And you.